Hey YouTube, today I wanted to go over one of the cars I'm considering for leasing next year, and it is the 2021 Porsche Macan. And I'm currently driving a 2017 Lexus RX 350, and my lease is up next year, so I'm taking a look at this car, which kind of suits my goals as a family hauler. I'm looking for seating for four, my wife and my two kids. And coming from the RX, I'm looking for something a little bit smaller, a little bit more fun to drive. So this came under my radar. It looked like something pretty interesting. The MSRP is 57 in Canada, and it looked okay equipped, this car. A little bit about the Porsche Macan. So it's been around since 2014, and it's actually in its first generation of production. So it hasn't really gone over somewhat of a major generation overhaul. And this year in 2021, there are a few upgrades in terms of cosmetics. I think on the exterior, the main thing is this light beam that goes across that is shared with the 911. So I think that looks really nice, and it's a nice addition to the car. And I believe the lights are those four LEDs that are kind of on the 911 as well. So I think it's a pretty good looking car. I think it looks most like an iconic kind of Porsche, like a 911. So I think the styling is really nice, actually, in my opinion. And it's been a popular car for Porsche. You can see that since its introduction in 2014, sales have been increasing almost every year to about 22,000 units per year in Canada, in US, and in Canada, similarly, there's been a pickup almost every year. So it's been a pretty popular car, and it sells a lot for, the Porsche lineup when you look at it in its whole. You see it has two SUVs and, the Panamera, and basically a lot of sports cars. So it seemed like an interesting ride to consider. I test drove it and it handled very well. The steering was very precise and it drove very much like a car, and I actually enjoyed driving it quite a bit. I drove the normal base version, and it has a four-cylinder turbo. And I've seen a lot of reviews online that they say it's kind of underpowered because it only has 250 horsepower. It's a four-cylinder with a turbo. So I believe the Macan S is the V6, which has a 350 horsepower. And then from there, it just goes up pretty much to an insane level of speed. So for me, the purposes were, it's going to be a family hauler. My wife is going to drive it more. So I don't want it to be, crazy fast. So like even the S at 350 is probably too much. So around 250, it drove pretty well. Like it wasn't crazy fast, but that, like I said, for our needs, it's going to be perfect. When I was doing some research, the only thing I noticed was there's quite a bit of recalls, some of them that were kind of serious recently. Like this one at the beginning of the year, basically fuel system and the fuel pump, which is, could be a pretty major problem if you're on the road. And a few with the electrical system. And just, simple Google and YouTube searches, there's been a lot of problems with kind of like oil leaks that become big problems in terms of repairs, and that can cause major damage. So, this is a car that I probably don't want to keep, just lease it for 3-4 years and then, get rid of it, because it probably, on the reliability end, it probably won't hold up in terms of reliability like some of the other Porsche lineup, like the 911. The interior I thought that it was gorgeous. The seats were nice, and I know for 2020, the infotainment was updated to be much larger. So if you can see in the screen that the infotainment basically is quite wide and fills up this entire panel, whereas before it was pretty small like this. Like it was a lot smaller. So they updated it for this year to have the larger infotainment. And in a few years, they're going to compete with the Model Y and basically have a all electric Macan. So I think it'll be pretty interesting what they're doing in the next few years. So in summary, if I look at kind of the numbers, what was interesting was during the COVID, they had a promotional lease rate of around 3.9%, which is still kind of high compared to other luxury manufacturers. But I guess Porsche, they don't produce a lot of cars, and their justification is because of that low volume, they have to, make a higher return and lease rate on the other cars. But I've seen in the past that on the Macan, the lease rate is typically between 5 to 6%. So I think it's only because of COVID and their lower sales that they want to reduce the lease rate. What is also interesting was when I went to the dealer, I know that they have kind of a prepaid maintenance package that can kind of be rolled into the price of the car, and then that total price can be leased. So, and that number I recall seemed reasonable, like 3 to 4 thousand, I believe. So over the course of the car, I think it didn't seem like too much per year, maybe $1 to $2,000 in maintenance. And what I liked about the car, my impressions was it had very nice handling, almost car-like. It had a decent residual, around 50% after 4 years. The interior was very nice, and I sat in the back. And as I watched a few reviews, they said that the head space was very small at the top, at the back seat for larger people. But I'm around 6 feet, and I was able to seat very comfortably at the back. So I was actually surprised at the back seat height. And I like the exterior refreshes for the 2020 model. But, it's kind of an aspirational brand. When people want to get Porsche, they maybe think of the 911, and Porsche is just really expanding and, lowering the price point and building more SUVs to reach a broader market. And the Macan platform has been around for quite a while, 2014. So it is probably going to have a major refresh soon. So you're kind of buying an older platform. And what I disliked about the car was when I thought about it, there was almost a 60,000 K price that you're paying for it, and it was pretty expensive for what you were getting. And the options for Porsche are very expensive. So me just specking out a pretty minimal Porsche Macan brought the price to about 59. If you look at it and build your own, the price starts at almost 60 grand already. So if you add one or two options, and that'll pretty much bring it to 60,000. But a lot of the options on the car are pretty much not like visual. They're pretty much visual options. So you can somewhat get away with not having a lot of options on the base. So I packaged it in around 60,000 with one or two options, and it seems suitable. So in the future, I'll do more analysis on this car, and we'll see where it goes.